Late-night host Jimmy Kimmel's show has been pulled from U.S. television schedules indefinitely, following controversial remarks about the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The comments, aired on September 14th, suggested political exploitation of the suspected gunman, Tyler Robinson, by the MAGA movement. Kimmel said the weekend brought new lows as efforts were made to portray Robinson as anything other than affiliated with the MAGA movement. Kimmel referenced President Donald Trump, showing a clip of the president discussing White House renovations in the wake of Kirk's death. Kimmel mocked the president, saying, "This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish." After Kirk's death on September 10th, Kimmel had posted on X, expressing sympathy for the family and calling the shooting horrible and monstrous, extending love to victims of senseless gun violence. ABC announced the indefinite removal of Jimmy Kimmel Live from its broadcast schedule. The decision came after Nexstar Media Group, which owns many U.S. television stations, said it would no longer air the show. President Donald Trump reacted positively, calling the cancellation "great news for America" on his Truth Social account while on a state visit to London.
Who would you like to see replace Kimmel on late night?
Well, a lot of people, anybody could replace him. The guy had no talent. Kimmel look, he was fired, he had no talent. He's a whack job, but he had no talent, and more importantly than talent, he had no, because a lot of people have no talent, they get ratings. But he had no ratings. His ratings were worse than Colbert, I think. They got rid of Colbert, which was a good thing to do. And look, that's something that should be talked about for licensing too. When you have a network and you have evening shows and all they do is hit Trump, that's all they do. If you go back, I guess they haven't had a conservative on in years or something, somebody said. But when you go back and you take a look, all they do is hit Trump. They're licensed. They're not allowed to do that. They're an arm of the Democrat Party.
Mr. President, are you going to ask Brendan Carr to weigh in on other late-night hosts that you have said should be off the air?
Late-night host is on network television. There is a licensing. I'll give you an example. I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. I got 97% negative, and yet I won it easily. I won all 7 swing states, popular, I won everything. And if they're 97% against, they give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It will be up to Brendan Carr. I think Brendan Carr is outstanding. He's a patriot. He loves our country, and he's a tough guy. So we'll have to see. When you think about this, 97% of the stories are opposed to me, and yet I win easily the election. It's pretty amazing when you think of it. That shows they have no credibility. Go ahead.
I was just going to agree with you. I mean, could you use that same logic with news? If someone,
in the old days, I remember in the old days that every 4 or 5 years, a network would reapply for its license, and the license is free. You know, they get this valuable thing for free, and they'd reapply for a license. And if they did something wrong, well, I beat George Stephanopoulos, Slopadopoulos, I call him, George Slopadopoulos. They had to pay me $15 million for what he said. I beat CBS for much more money than that, including advertising and other things, much more money, because they totally changed the answer that Kamala gave on a question. I mean, they didn't change it. They took it out and put a different answer in. And they didn't want to go to court with that. That's a tough one to go to court with. So, no, I think that if you remember, years ago, I remember as a kid, they would file, it was a big deal every 4 or 5 years, and I don't know, you don't hold me exact, but it was like 4 or 5 years, they'd have to file for a license extension. I don't hear about that. The only one that I've heard even bring it up is Brendan Carr. I think Brendan Carr is doing a great job, and I think he's a great patriot.
President, if I can, on the tough subject of free speech, Ted Cruz compared Brendan Carr to a mob boss, the way he's threatening television stations and saying it's absolutely dangerous for the government to determine which speech is okay and which is not. What's your reaction to Ted Cruz?
I think Brendan Carr is an incredible American patriot with courage. You know, it used to be, I remember in the old days that networks would have to get licensed, relicensed, and it was always a big deal. You know, they had a...
Comedian David Cross condemned Jimmy Kimmel's show suspension as blatantly anti-American. Comedian Kathy Griffin, known for courting controversy, called ABC's suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live over Kimmel's remarks unwarranted. Jimmy pushes boundaries. All the late-night hosts do because it's their job, the 64-year-old said.
Kimmel didn't say anything negative about Charlie Kirk. He didn't say anything negative about Charlie Kirk. He said that the Republican Party is going to try to pin this, desperately make it seem like it was anything but a Republican-minded person. And, he said that when we didn't even know anything about the killer. But that's all he said. And then he made fun of Trump's, and made fun of it by just highlighting his lack of empathy for the situation. That's it. He didn't even say anything negative about Charlie Kirk. Let's remember that. It's a direct action, which is threatening to free speech. And it's also one of the most clearly, blatantly anti-American things that have happened in a long spate of them. This is, at its core, absolutely anti-American.
Hollywood stand-up comedians, meanwhile, vowed on September 18th to continue delivering provocative political humor, despite Kimmel's show being pulled following his comments about the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Democratic critics have said that pulling his show off the air is an infringement of Kimmel's right to free speech, as guaranteed by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. James Christian Kimmel, born November 13, 1967, is a prominent American television host and comedian. Best known as the host and executive producer of Jimmy Kimmel Live, Kimmel has become a fixture in late-night television. He has hosted the Primetime Emmy Awards 3 times in 2012, 2016, and 2020, and the Academy Awards 4 times in 2017, 2018, 2023, and 2024. Before Jimmy Kimmel Live, Kimmel co-hosted Comedy Central's The Man Show and Win Ben Stein's Money. He also produced shows like Crank Yankers, Sports Show with Norm Macdonald, and The Andy Milonakis Show. In 2018, Time magazine recognized him as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Kimmel currently holds the record as the longest-running host of a single late-night show among all active U.S. hosts, with 23 seasons, second only to Johnny Carson, who hosted The Tonight Show for 30 seasons.
Let's just say it plain and simple. President Trump is abusing the vast powers of the federal government to shut down people who dare disagree with him. From universities to law firms to nonprofits to journalists, Trump is abusing his power and violating the First Amendment daily to punish anyone who does not line up behind his agenda. That would be wrong no matter which party did it, no matter who the president was. So I'm thankful to my colleagues who are putting together this legislation to protect churches and nonprofits, newspapers, magazines, colleges, workers, students from any president who tries to target his political opponents, shred our Constitution, and disgrace our values in the process. We are in the biggest free speech crisis this country has faced since the McCarthy era. The murder of Charlie Kirk was a horrific crime, and it's clear that Trump wants to hijack that horrific crime to silence anyone who disagrees with the president about any issue. While Mr. Kirk's tragic murder is new, Trump's desire to shut down all opposition is not. From the beginning of his administration, Trump has tried to go after anyone who dares question him. And as we saw last night, far too many billionaires and corporate-owned media companies are bending the knee. Disney and ABC, Paramount and CBS, the Washington Post editorial board, Facebook. Let's be clear. The ultra-wealthy men who run these companies are making a choice. David Ellison, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Bob Iger. These men are enriching themselves, auctioning off the United States' First Amendment to a wannabe tyrant. We have to ask ourselves that if Watergate happened today, would our biggest news outlets be allowed to run the story? Or would a billionaire owner decide that crossing the administration just isn't worth it for his bottom line? If you're watching at home, please know this is not just about the rights of a TV host or a big university. Trump and his billionaire buddies want to silence dissent so that they can run the country for their own benefit. First, it might have been they came after students and professors. Next, it's media companies and journalists. After that, it's churches and nonprofits. After that, it's you. It's all of us. Remember that Donald Trump did not turn against Jimmy Kimmel because of anything he said this week. He turned against Jimmy Kimmel when 8 years ago, Mr. Kimmel spoke up about stopping Trump and Trump trying to take away the Affordable Care Act from millions of Americans.